So this is going to be swatches of the Metropolitan Wildberry Nabla palettes. So this is incense, and it has kind of a chunkier texture. It's somewhat of a hybrid cream powder shadow, and it's got some kind of like some sparkly stuff in it. It's not your typical mica based shimmer. They use something called glass beads, which don't ask me what that is, I actually don't know. This next shade is Venom. That swatch really didn't come out good, but this shade actually, this and all the other mattes are very, very smooth. You can see there's not much streakiness. They blend really well, and they're very buildable. You can use them sheer, you can build them up to the intensity that you see in the pan. This next one is Bucolic Baby, if that's how you pronounce that. I have no idea. So this is, it swatches more metallic than it actually looks when you put it on the eye. This, it actually looks kind of sheer. So if you use some kind of other shade underneath it, you're going to see a lot of that shade showing through. It's more like a topper shade. This is Alchemy 2.0. This is another one of those same kind of topper shades. This is Blackberry. It looks like a deep brown in the pan, and maybe in the swatch also, but actually it's like a muted purple. And this last one is Botanic Juice. So I will do the Metropolitan palette now. This first shade is Lord. And this shade looks, let me get the other palette. This shade looks like the other one in the pan. It looks like if you were to get both of these, like you're getting the same shade a second time, but you're not. It's definitely a different shade. This next one's Alaska. I have a little bit of that brown still in my, from the last one, so it's like coming through on this swatch. But that's not really how it's supposed to look. Let me do another one. That's another topper shade. So next one is Nothing Personal. Out of all of the mattes, this one is the only one that stains slightly. It's not too bad. It will leave a very slight stain, but I've seen much worse staining eyeshadows than this. And it's also the most, like, I don't want to say rough or dry, but like the rest of the mattes are really incredibly smooth, and a lot of people use the word creamy. They're not creamy, they're definitely powders, but they have that kind of quality to them where they're incredibly smooth. And this one is like a little bit less than that, but it's still really a nice texture. This next one is Love Resin. This one is different than the other shimmers. It's got kind of like a base, like your standard shimmer base, and then it's got some like larger golden sparkles in it, like almost glitter sized. Not quite, but kind of almost getting there. And it's more, it feels more emollient than the others. Maybe a little, like if you think of the word like if they use silicones and stuff, like that's kind of how it has that feeling to it. This next one is, I don't know how you say this, Animalia. Who knows? This is probably the most metallic out of all of the shimmers, and it's pretty opaque. And this last one is Dissolution. And it's almost as shiny as the other one, as Animalia, but it's a different texture. So in looking, when I was buying these palettes, one of the reasons why I went ahead and bought them was because they had a couple of shades that I thought that I didn't have already, and those were Venom and Nothing Personal, and a couple of these shimmers like Alchemy 2.0. I thought I didn't really have anything quite like that. Bucolic Baby, Alaska. So I went through my collection and I was looking for potential dupes or just like similar shades to see what I had that was like that, because maybe I actually did have something like that and I didn't realize it. So I'm going to show you what I found. I'll start off with this one. This is Venom. This is one of the Norvina little mini palettes, the Volume 2 Mini Pro Pigment palette. And the shade I thought might be similar is this one. It's not. I mean, it depends on your level of like what you consider similar, but yeah, this is definitely more pink. So. And here is the original Urban Decay Electric palette. I did not. I think it was either this one or this one. I'm pretty sure it was this one, Jilted, that I looked at it, and in the pan it really doesn't look anywhere near like that shade. But I mean, it is kind of similar. It's just that this is it's more like a satin, definitely a different texture. But the color is really very similar. This is the ColourPop Lilac palette. And I compared it to Filtered. Oh, you didn't even see that. Filtered is the one I'm going to be looking at. Yeah, this is not quite the same. And this is it's more dry and powdery, I guess. Here is the Ace Beauty Flair palette, Aubergine. This is probably one of the closest shades I have to this. And yeah, the quality is a lot nicer in the Nabla palette. This isn't bad. I mean, it's definitely usable. Here is the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. And Amethyst is the one that I thought might be similar. and the Tati Beauty palette, the shade called Poet. This is more, a little more reddish brown kind of shade. So these are going to be dupes for Nothing Personal. We're going to go back into the Urban Decay Electric palette, into the shade Slow Burn. So this one is more, it's got a little bit of shimmer in it, just like a tiny bit, and it's definitely brighter. This is the ABH Norvina Volume 1 mini palette, and the shade in the top left corner is the one that I thought might be comparable. It's pretty close. This is the Huda Beauty Neon Orange palette. And I think it was this shade in the top right corner. I don't know, let's see. I feel like this shade isn't, I don't know if it's not as unique or I'm not able to tell the difference visually as easily as with the other one. So this is the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes palette, and Peach Punch is the one that's maybe similar. Yeah, it's a little bit more muted, a little more brownish kind of. And the last one is, this is Makeup Geek, and I don't know what this shade is called. Let me see if I can get it out of there. But I think that might be similar. This is called Staycation. Oh yeah, this is a lot more like the Too Faced shade that I just swatched. This is going to be dupes for Alchemy 2.0. See that? There we go. This is a ColourPop Super Shock Shadow in the shade Day Trippin'. This is the ColourPop It's My Pleasure palette, and this shade, I think you can still get it as a single called Earthshine. I'm not totally sure, but they did used to sell it by itself. No, this is not really the same at all. This was actually kind of hard to find a dupe for, both in the color and the kind of the finish of it. It's a shimmer, but the particles are kind of large and not glittery, but like just they're larger sparkles, and I don't have a whole lot of things that are like that. This is the ABH Norvina palette. Let's see which one. Volume 4, the bigger one they came out with. And let's see, A2 here is the one that's looks like it might be similar. This one's more like kind of approaching metallic, but not quite. And this is just more sparkly. This is the Huda Beauty Neon Pink palette. And I think the one that I was looking at was this one, maybe. Let's see. Oh no, that's not really the same at all. Maybe it was this one down here. Yeah, this one's more similar. So far, that's probably the closest match. I think I like the Nabla one a little bit better. Here's another Huda Beauty palette, the Nude Light palette. And this purple shade in the center of the top row. It's definitely different. And then I just have a few like indie singles that they're kind of interesting to see how they compare. They're not really the same, and the finish and the texture is different. But this is Terra Moon's Wavelength. And these are 3 Divina Cosmetics shades. I don't know if they're all from the same collection or not. Anyways, this is Runts. This one is Kazookles. And this one is Marshmallow Pillows. I'd say probably this is the closest, but it's definitely not the same. The kind of blue sparkles are similar, but then this has more of like a brownish undertone to it. These are a little bit harder to see if I don't move my arm with the light. So I'm looking for dupes for Bucolic Baby now. This is the ColourPop making Mauves palette, and this shade looks like it's kind of similar. This is a pretty waxy feeling shade. It's not my favorite thing to use, but it does have kind of a unique effect. Here's the Huda Beauty Nude Light palette, and I think it's this shade. This one is still, it's more sheer. In the swatch it doesn't really look like it's that sheer, but when you use it, it's more sheer than that. Here is the Huda Beauty Neon Green palette. This is more orangey, coppery kind of color. This is more pink. Here's the ABH Mini Pro Pigment Volume 1 palette. And this is pretty similar to this last shade that I used. Natasha Denona Love palette and the shade Giving. I feel like this one's a little bit lighter and a little bit warmer, but it's more similar than I thought it would be. And the big ABH Norvina palette, Volume 4. If I can get this thing to open up. And this, I already know this is not... I don't even think that was the shade. I think it was this shade. Yeah, that's not at all the same. Let's see the second one. The second one is more brown. So I actually don't have anything that's really like that one. So far, I haven't duped everything, but I mean, so far the shades that are in these little palettes are pretty unique, so, and I do think the quality is pretty good, so worth keeping. Okay, this is going to be the last set of swatches, dupes for Alaska in the Metropolitan palette. When I first saw this shade in person versus the swatches that were advertised, I don't know, it just didn't seem like anything special. It wasn't really, I guess, what I imagined. Even though looking at the advertised swatches now versus like what it looks like in person to me now, I think they are shown accurately for the most part. I guess it just sometimes you imagine things looking different than they do. So this was the shade that I had the fewest dupes for in my collection. The first one that I found was in the Revolution Pro Night and Day palette. And when I say dupes, they're not dupes, they're just like similar. And it's this shade here in the bottom right. Second, there's actually two in here that are kind of similar. This is the Kat Von D Shade and Light Glimmer Eye Contour Palette. So this was the second one that came out, I guess a few years after the first one. And there's these two shimmery white ones that are in the bottom row. So that one's got more like golden flecks in it. And this is more like a neutral white. Here's the ColourPop So Jaded palette. And the shade Diamond in here is kind of has a similar effect, but this is a Super Shock Shadow, and this has some like greenish kind of flecks in it. And one more thing, this is a ColourPop, what is this? It's Day Trippin' Super Shock Shadow. I think I compared this to something else earlier in this video. Oh, that's awkward. I think this is the most similar to Alaska.